just like when I come to the World Public Forum, I was both humbled and inspired by the experience. For a social scientist to be able to sit down with one of the preeminent sociologists and literally to go with the books that he had written in front of me and go through them line by line to say, what did you really mean when you wrote this in 1996, was extremely unfair on my part, but he was extremely gracious to respond to these questions, and from it emerged, and for me was a fascinating discussion, and fascinating for two reasons. One, primarily is Professor Bauman's ability to place current developments within a broader historical trajectory. And for those of you who are familiar with his writing, Professor Bauman, in many ways, had anticipated the crisis, economic, social, and political, of the globalization and the post-globalization, even before we had globalization and post-globalization. And this brings to the second reason why I think the discussion was fascinating, was in Bauman's work. I think we find many of perhaps the seeds for us to find a way out of the current crisis. I think in the chapter, in our discussion, three main points came out. The first is the notion of the interregnum. Professor Bauman's argument is that we are witnessing and we are living through the end of a picture of the world, if you will, but we are not quite clear yet, and Piotr's opening comments in the plenary session the other day about this picture not being clear, we're not clear what picture is going to replace this. And we know from history that periods of interregnum are periods of great insecurity, great instability, but also periods of great opportunity. And I think in this chapter, just as I think in many, or if not all of the chapters in the book, the opportunities will come from discussion, dialogue, listening, maybe even conflict, but not violent conflict, but a clashing of ideas. The second point that I think comes out of the book, which will lead to the third point, which is where we might find answers, and this is Professor Bauman's long-standing argument about modernity and the consequences it has for the idea of the social. And Professor Bauman has written about liquid modernity. And in many ways it touches upon what Vladimir Yakunin said in the plenary session, the atomization of society, which may result from these processes of modernity which are interpreted in a particular way. Bauman's argument is that modernity, there can be many modernities, and we need to find ways to perhaps counteract, balance those pressures which might lead to a liquid modernity. And this comes to his third point, and this came out of our discussion where we were talking specifically about the current crisis in Europe and the depth of the crisis in Europe. But Professor Bauman took the European experience to make some broader points about the importance of the social state. The idea that to counter modernity, we also need to have institutions, not just state institutions, but institutions in society that can help create the sense of belonging to a community, that belonging to something called the social. And only from there can we do concepts and ideas like solidarity mean something. That we have to have a sense of belonging to something that is greater than the sum of his parts. And his wish was that we recreate or we find in the social the basis on which we can create enduring processes that allow us to fix what is wrong in this interregnum. Thank you.